Where are you from?
I was born and raised in India,
Where in India?
in the eastern part of India, in a state named Odisha.
Orissa.
Yeah. And
Was it a big city or a small town?
Phil, for you.
it was the biggest town in that state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's a small town if you want to compare in today's standards.
Yeah.
And I lived in India until I married.
Until you married.
Yeah. And then I came to US.
What was your childhood like?
I grew up in a family with, I have a brother and two other sisters. So we were four of us,
Mm-hmm.
and parents, and a middle class family. My father was also an educationist. He was taught in a college and then later did administrative work
Mm-hmm.
as the principal of a college. And then he was dean, I think, at some point, and a vice chancellor at one point.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, um, that
And your
was why.
mom?
My mom was very loving and very strict.
Was she stay-at-home mom? Or
She
did she
was a
work?
stay. No, she didn't work. She only had um, maybe a year of college,
Okay.
not more than that. She married quite young.
You said two things that sometimes are in opposition. You said she was very loving, and then you said she was
Very
strict.
strict.
Yeah, very strict.
She
How did those work together?
because there were rules. There were rules, and we obeyed the rules.
You had to obey the rules.
Yeah, I mean, that was a different time. Nobody questioned.
Is this when you'd get hit by a sandal or something if you didn't obey the rules?
My parents never disciplined us.
Never
Never
disciplined.
physically disciplined us.
Okay.
Never.
I interviewed Pratim, a gentleman who we talked about Tantra,
Hmm.
and he was from India, and he said he got slapped a lot growing up.
It just depends on the people.
But you guys didn't.
Never, never.
Well, how did you get disciplined? How?
So my mother always made us see the consequence of our actions. She was very good at that. So, but there were things we were supposed to do. We all had our chores very wisely distributed. Like I was always a slow eater. I would be the last one to finish my meals. So I had to clean up, clean the table, take do the dishes, all that I had to do. My sister was a late riser. She had to make the beds. So it was all very logically divided and we didn't question it. It made sense to us.
Yeah.
And we played a lot of games in the family. And my mother was somewhat religious. My father wasn't that much religious. My father had a reputation for being very honest.
Mm.
And his students respected him a lot. So I would say I was very lucky to grow up in the family that I grew up in. And they instilled some good values in me. My parents did. But then I had a sheltered life. I lived at home. I'd never left home. And then I married, and I came to US.
How old were you?
I was 22.
22. You were confused. You don't remember.
Yeah, I mean,
Or you think
yeah,
it's old
something
or
like
young, or
that.
what was the face?
22.
Um,
It's kind of young, I think.
You think that's young?
Yeah, I mean, I think I grew up maybe 10 years in my first 2 years here.
Was it an arranged marriage?
It was,
Okay.
yeah.
So had you ever met your
I had
husband?
met him, and the families knew each other. My my husband's father was a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
My maternal grandfather was a judge.
Mm-hmm.
So they were in the, same legal business.
Did you like the guy? Did you like your
I
husband
did.
before
I
you married
did.
him? You
I
did.
did. Yeah, I did. We talked for a little bit, and
For a little bit.
yeah, I mean, like an hour or so.
And then you got married.
Yeah.
You talked for an hour.
No. Then actually he left. He had come to visit, and then he left, and he was still a student doing his PhD, and he was supposed to finish his thesis and come back, and we were supposed to get married, and that was supposed to take 6 months, but it took a year. So
Mm-hmm.
it could go that way. So there was a whole year he was here, and so we did correspond by mail.
Mm-hmm.
No email.
No email back then.
No phone.
Snail mail?
Snail
Oh
mail.
my
Yeah,
goodness.
snail mail.
That would take a long time.
Yeah. So we did that. So I kind of knew a little bit, but I mean, you don't really know somebody until you live together. So, and then there was the cultural clash coming to America.
Where did you come in America? Where did you land?
Landed in New York, and then he lived in Maryland at the time.
Maryland, yeah.
Yeah, and then so that's where we lived for the first 18 months,
Mm-hmm.
and then he got the faculty position at UT, and we moved here to
You're
Austin.
still married
Mhm.
to him.
Yeah,
That was who I
50
met.
years.
That's who I met who dropped you off.
Yeah.
Yeah, he seems like a cool guy.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
So it has been 50 years.
What's he teaching at UT?
He's retired now. He's a emeritus. He taught computer science.
Oh, computer science.
Yeah.
Y'all were married how long?
50.
50 years.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's an anomaly these days, isn't it?
Among Indians, maybe not.
The Indians don't get divorced.
In my generation, I mean, they do. It's increasing now. In my generation, it's not uncommon to be married a long time.
Yeah.
Our parents married for life, and his parents and my parents, and everybody I know pretty much in my family. So it doesn't occur to you to do otherwise.
Yeah.
You just treat it as a commitment, lifetime commitment, and you adjust.
Yeah. What were so one watershed moment for you, or one big transition or change in life was coming to America and the cultural
So,
clash?
The culture clash. So, this was before television. Okay.
What year was this? This was
70. We got married in 72.
How old are you?
I was 22.
No, how old are you now?
I am.
Is this a bad thing to ask a woman?
74.
Some people say you're not supposed to ask women their age.
It's okay.
You're 74.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this was when you were 24.
50 years in Austin. I came to Austin in 74.
Mm-hmm.
So 50 years in
I was born in
Austin.
77. You moved here before I was born.
Yeah. Lived pretty much all my life in Austin. I've seen the city grow. Population was 250,000.
When you moved here?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah. Austin ended. I mean, yeah, there was some South Austin. On the other side of the river, it went somewhat, but on the north side, pretty much 183 was the limit. There was no 360.
Yeah.
There was no Mopac.
Yeah. That was a train
35,
track, right?
yeah, train track. Balcones Drive. And then the train, On the east, how far did it go on the east? Maynard Road, maybe? I don't know.
What was the cultural clash for you? What was the main challenge?
I loved it when I moved to Texas because the climate was more like India.
It's hot in India?
Oh boy, is it hot?
Hotter than Texas.
It's more humid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It rains 60 inches a year, the part of India where I grew up. But all of that happens in 3 months. So we have the rainy season, the monsoons.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the year is pretty dry. But it's still pretty humid. So in Maryland, I mean the biggest problem was the winter.
It's
I
so
was
cold.
I was not used to cold. I'd never worn shoes in my life.
You've never worn shoes?
No,
Never.
no. You just wear slippers.
What did you wear? You wear slippers?
Yeah, just slippers. And if you run barefoot. I mean, now it has changed. People in those days didn't have that much money. That was not far after the independence. So my husband was born in 1947, the year just after independence.
For India?
For India. India got independent from the British in 1947.
Okay.
2 months after that, my husband was born. I was born 3 years later. So the cultural surrounding, there was a lot of hope. We are independent. There was pride that we won independence without violence.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of Gandhian thoughts, a lot of patriotism in a good way,
Mm-hmm.
A lot of hope. And so I knew that, okay, my grandmother did not finish high school. I mean, she went only up to 5th grade. My mother finished high school. I would finish college. So, being a woman, that's a lot.
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
Did you finish college?
I did a master's.
You went further than finishing college.
Yeah.
You did college extra.
Yeah.
What'd you get your master's in?
Well, I have a master's in computer science from UT.
Okay.
And then I worked as a programmer. You said you were
I'm a software engineer. Yeah, I did
Yeah.
that for 10 years or so.
I did that for 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I quit.
Your husband probably helped you a little bit?
Um,
Because he was teaching computer science, right?
He was teaching computer science. I tried to avoid his class, but then he was teaching one core class I had to take. So I was in one of his classes. But then
He better not give you an F, that's for sure. Our dinner would be late.
So that's why I didn't want to take his
I
class.
know, I'm just joking. Yeah.
But I was always a good student.
Yeah.
Growing up, that was one of my values, to do your best. So that wasn't too much of a problem. But, just not knowing the culture, I didn't know. I couldn't speak English that well. I mean, I could, but I could write better than I could speak.
Yeah.
Read and write better than I could speak. I did not understand some of the American accents.
Mm.
So conversation was a little, I was conscious about that. I was conscious about, there were not very many Indians. I was conscious about.
In Texas, in Austin, Texas, you must have been a small.
But actually, I felt better coming to Texas because there were more brown-skinned people here.
Hispanic folks.
Yeah.
People from Mexico.
Yeah, and they were very friendly.
Yeah.
And they would talk to you in Spanish knowing that you don't understand.
But just because you're tan, they would think, I speak Spanish to tan folks.
Right. So the first day we moved to Austin, it was raining. And I felt so good. Oh, it's raining, just like home.
Mm-hmm.
And then, there are some people, these people look like us. And then, they come and they seem very friendly and slow going. easy-going. In Maryland, the winter was hard. I was dying to see snow. Never seen it in my life, but I didn't know how to walk in snow, so I fell quite a bit.
Yeah.
And, and I was driving a long distance. We lived in College Park. I went to school. We lived in Gaithersburg, and I went to college in College Park, Maryland,
Okay.
University of Maryland. So that was a long drive.
And it seems like there weren't tan folks there. There weren't people that looked like Jews.
There weren't that many.
White
No.
folks.
It was mostly white folks. They were much taller. So in India, I was a tall girl, believe it
tall
or
were you?
not. I have shrunk a little bit. I think I was 5'4".
And that was tall.
That was tall.
So
A lot of
Indian people a little bit shorter?
They are taller now
They're taller now.
because food habits have changed, I think.
Ah.
People are eating better.
So they're growing taller.
Growing taller, I guess. So I was one of the tallest girls in my class
At 5'4".
at 5'4". And here, people just looked so big. I wasn't used to seeing winter leafless trees.
Oh, yeah.
And that was very strange, landing in New York in January, and then being driven on the highway, and it's cold, and I see the trees. I'm looking to nature for sympathy, and I'm seeing like trees that look dead.
And you didn't have any shoes on? Oh,
I think we bought some shoes for me. We stopped for a day in Brussels on the way.
okay.
So we bought a pair of shoes and a jacket.
Yeah, you're going to need that.
Yeah. So I did have that when I landed in New York, but it was still cold. And then the cars were, I don't know if you have ever been to India. In India,
I've never been.
but you must have seen in television nowadays, Those days were pre-television days, so I had no idea what to expect. I had seen some picture postcards. My father came to America before I was born.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Cornell University. He had a PhD from there in education.
Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't know a lot of things. I didn't know anything really. How to talk, how to dress myself, and people stared at me a lot.
They did?
Yeah.
Did you experience
Because
racism or anything like that? Anything negative?
I wouldn't say racism per se, but just people felt, they stared at you. You were weird. You were different.
Because you were different.
Yeah, the unfamiliarity.
Yeah, so they would look at
Yeah.
you probably
People
with some
were nice
curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity. People were nice. People were friendly.
Mhm.
So I think, so my children are darker skinned than me.
Mhm.
My son, my older son is quite dark, and I think he probably experienced growing up here more racism than I did.
Mm.
Or at least racist or subtle racism, maybe.
Microaggressions.
Yeah, something like that. Or just people making assumptions by your looks,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Some of that had happened to me too. For example, people will look at me and assume something. Maybe they have a image in their mind, perception again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm in some meeting and something would come up and I would provide my input. So the minute I open my mouth, they feel somewhat awed. Maybe they weren't expecting me to speak or to speak the way I spoke.
They expected you to have like a Hispanic accent?
I have no idea, but And somebody sometimes would say, so where did you learn your English? You know? So maybe they didn't expect me to speak English
Yeah.
without making errors.
Hmm.
So there were, little things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't call them racism. It's just unfamiliarity.
Yeah.
I was unfamiliar. They were unfamiliar with my ways. After I didn't have any Western clothes, I was dressing in Indian clothes. So that would attract.
Were those very different?
Yeah, I was wearing a sari
Okay.
and, very different. The red dot.
You had the dot?
I don't wear it anymore, but you must have seen.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah. So people were very curious about it.
Yeah.
And now they have the stick-ons. In those days, it was either a powder or a paste. And so I would have that and I would forget and I would go in the swimming pool. And then one time a child was worried thinking that I was bleeding. There were little things like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
So you lived 50 years here in Austin, Texas.
right. Long time.
That is a long time.
Yeah.
That's longer than most. And you raised kids here.
I raised 2 boys.
2 boys.
Yeah. Yeah. My son has a theory that women who have only boys become tougher. And men who have only girls mellow over the years.
I have 2 girls.
Have you mellowed over the years?
I think I'm mellowing. Well, my experience is I've got 2 girls. They're 12 and 16. They both have reached the age of menstruation. There can be a lot of emotions going around, and I have to hold through those,
Yeah.
stay grounded, and provide something for them to co-regulate too, as opposed to me. And historically, I've risen
Yeah.
to the frequency, the emotions that were present.
Yeah.
And it escalates when that happens. And then it gets a little out of control and overwhelming for everybody.
Yeah.
When the parent is moving towards the emotional state of the kids.
Yeah.
So I've been practicing and I think getting better at holding and being calm through, all kind of wild throes of emotion, which I think could be considered mellowing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes those girls have big, big emotions and they'll share them with me.
That's good. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing, being an immigrant, raising kids in a different culture. So on one hand, you want to give them the best of both cultures, but you don't have anyone to help you. I mean, right now the population is large and but when I was raising children, there were very few Indians here. Of course, we didn't have any family. So I had to learn everything by the book, how to be a parent and and then I wasn't familiar with what kids, especially boys, go through in the American school system. Elementary school was very nice. The teachers were very nice and kind. Problems would start in middle school, high school, kind of.
Yeah.
And then, raising boys isn't easy. They can go out, not come back in time. And then we had fights. I called them rules, and my son called it curfew. And I said, no, it's just a rule, and we all follow it. I'm not asking you to follow any rule I don't follow myself.
Yeah. But he probably wanted to stay out with his friends late. Or...
Yeah, and it just got, the times change. So I have a lot of years between my children, and then the my older one thinks that his brother is of a different culture because of the age difference of
Mhm.
a different generation.
Yeah.
Things had changed so much, and my older son didn't have a cell phone. They were not there, not that common.
Yeah.
And my younger one has a phone, and he wouldn't even tell me where he's going. So you can reach me by my phone. Okay.
It's a new day.
And then now it's a whole different ball game with social media and all that.
Yeah.
It's hard
It
raising
is hard.
children in this age, I think. So anyway, I just learned and did my best.
Do your kids speak the language, the native? What is the language that you spoke
So
in
the
in
language is
India?
called Odia.
Oriya.
Yeah.
Do they speak Oriya?
They understand. My older one understands more. He speaks it when he visits India and he's left with people who don't speak English
Mm-hmm.
and he's forced to, then he would do it.
When he's got to find the bathroom.
Right. And then I have heard from other people that he speaks okay,
Yeah.
but he wouldn't speak with me.